Did want to talk a little bit about the Masters. We have a great show for you today. Andrea Adelson is going to join us, who was one of the coaches as the Gators infected the FSU spring game. And then we're also going to talk to Becky Burleigh, the former Florida coach, which is weird to say, former Florida soccer coach. She'll be on. I think we're going to have Jay Billis on Friday. That'll be a lot of fun as well. Did want to talk a little bit about the Masters. It was kind of funny. I quit on it, and which I know better than to do that. I was watching it, and there's a guy who's got a 5-shot lead, and the people behind him aren't intriguing to me. And I started watching a movie with my daughter. She was watching Kill Bill 2, which is pretty gory, but it was really good. And then all of a sudden my wife came in and said, "Hey, that guy that was leading," I go, "Yeah." She goes, "He hit in the water just now." So I ran into my room and watched it. And of course, right after that, Schauffele hits it in the water. But it was certainly a historic win. And that Hideki Matsuyama won, the first Japanese player to ever do that. And it is such a big deal in Japan, as we were told over and over and over again. But I do want to say, Jim Nantz should do every golf broadcast. He just has to do every golf broadcast. Nobody else should be allowed to do golf but Jim Nantz. He's the best. One little incident that happened that I didn't even realize until I read about it, and I saw his Twitter apology, was Billy Horschel, of course, the former Florida Gator, who went into the creek twice at Race Creek on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday he did fine. Sunday didn't go so well, and he got mad and started slamming his club against his bag because he's quite the competitor. And I know he runs hot sometimes. And that's what I always worry. And again, I love Billy to death, and his 6 wins tell you how good a golfer he is. But sometimes I send him a text and just say, "Just breathe, Billy," because he competes so hard. But he did write an apology to the members at Augusta National. Second Gator to ever do that, because it's a long story, but I'll tell it as quickly as I can, because I know Andrea's waiting to come on, and can't wait to talk to her. But in 2003, Chris DeMarco, everything got backed up because of rain. And Chris DeMarco had like 2 holes to play. He was 15 over. He wasn't making the cut. We knew that. And he was going to have to come back and play the 2 holes the next day to miss the cut. And instead, he went home to watch his son Christian play baseball. And it was kind of a big deal up at Augusta. And so I called him. I said, "Dude, you need to apologize." And he's like, "For what?" And I told him, he goes, "Oh, man." He goes, "Write about this and give it to the guys at the Augusta Chronicle and make sure they know that I'm apologizing." This is before Twitter, so you couldn't just tweet out your apology. So that was certainly interesting. We'll talk a little bit about Gator baseball this weekend. A big weekend coming up for softball as well, and a lot of other stuff going on. But it's a great pleasure right now to be joined by my good friend Andrea Adelson, who, of course, used to be an Alligator sports writer, and now is at ESPN, covers college football, and does a wonderful job. If you're not reading her, you don't know what you're missing. Andrea, how are you today?
Hi, Pat. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you, and I'm jealous of you, though, because I coached the spring game 2 straight years for Will Muschamp. They never let me put on headsets. All I did was stand there like an idiot and watch the game. I didn't call any plays. So how much involvement did you have? Because I saw the picture on ESPN.com with you and Andy with your headsets on.
We called the plays, so I'm just going to show you real fast. We had a coaches meeting with Mike Norvell on Friday afternoon. And when we walked into the coaches meeting room, there waiting for us were these laminated play call sheets here. They had our names on them. And essentially we had 10 on offense, 8 on defense. And these are very basic play calls. There was nothing that was giving anything away from the Florida State offense. Essentially some counters, a double move, a couple passes, and a few tempo words. Defense had some base defenses and a couple of blitzes, and that was essentially it. So it was up to us once it came to our part of the game, which was the last 20 minutes, to decide how we wanted to call it. Which plays did we want to run? And Andy and I came up with a strategy to be aggressive, to blitz, and to run tempo. And that's what we tried to do. When I called some of the plays, some of them worked, some didn't, on offense and defense. And when Andy called the plays, some of them worked. And then, of course, we had the winning touchdown, which was awesome and so much fun. And the headsets were incredible because you can hear everything. The coaches are yelling at you, what's the next play, as soon as the first play is over, and you could communicate with them. And it felt like we were actually coaches. And so it just gave you a completely new and different perspective on what they're going through every single play.
Did it give you more respect for coaches? But you could just call anything. It just got to be the right play.
And the players have to execute it, Pat,
Right.
which I learned firsthand because the touchdown that we ran, I called the same exact play on our first series, and it didn't work. The tight end stayed down to block and didn't run the wheel route, and so the quarterback checked down to a screen. And in fact, I watched the tape afterward, like any good coach, Pat, because I wanted to know why it didn't work when we called it earlier. And the announcers are like, oh, Andrea, wow, she's very screen happy. And I'm like, no, that wasn't supposed to be a screen. That was supposed to be a double move. But so now I understand when the coaches hear the broadcasters that we don't have all the information a lot of the times, and why film review actually is important. You know, Pat, coaches say all the time when we ask them post-game press conferences about specific plays, and they'll say, I need to go back and watch the film.
Right.
And I'm always like, they just don't want to talk about it. No, actually watching the film is very informative, because when I went back and I watched the game, I saw why certain things worked and why they didn't based on the execution level from the players. So that was very eye-opening as well.
It had to be kind of nice for you, because I know you've written a lot about him, to be on the same field with Mackenzie Milton and to see him out there playing. I know he came in, I think, late in the game, right, and played, but what was that like for you?
It was surreal, to be honest, because I was there when he got hurt in 2018. It was Thanksgiving weekend. They were playing their rival USF on a Friday, and UCF was undefeated and once again challenging the narrative, trying to make a playoff run. They'd won 23 or 24 straight games behind Mackenzie, and he gets hurt, and we just don't know whether he's ever going to play football again. He almost had his leg amputated. It was that bad. Yeah, exactly. He had nerve damage and blood loss and artery damage and knee damage. Just, it looked like he was involved in a horrific car accident. And so coming back to get to this point and doing it at another school, Pat, where he's very new there. He's just learning the offense now. He's only been there since January. To see him make some of the plays that he made, he threw a touchdown pass, had some good reads, great throws, had one little scramble. I just sat there and I took it all in, because it just shows you that if you put in the work and you've got that dedication and the perseverance, anything can happen. And I was able to talk with Mackenzie briefly, and actually when he came over to say hi during the game, I showed him the play sheet, and he may or may not have given us a hint that the play that we won the game on would work. So I'm glad I had that connection with Mackenzie, and that he came over and said hi. He was my secret weapon.
Let me ask you about Florida State, and then we'll talk a little more about the ACC as a whole. Certainly, this is incredible. It's almost mind-boggling how far they've dropped. And it started with Jimbo's last year, where a lot of people feel like he pulled the cord on that year. And then Taggart comes in, and it just doesn't work. And Norvell's first season in the pandemic doesn't work. But a lot of people believe that they're going to be better this year, that they've done a good job of recruiting, done a good job in the portal. Was there anything you saw in this game, and I know spring games are meaningless, but is there any reason to believe that this could be a team that gets 8 to 9 wins this year?
If they win 8 to 9 games this year, Mike Norvell should be up for Coach of the Year. They just are so thin at so many key spots. The offensive line didn't really show me much in terms of growth and improvement. Now, they were missing a couple of starters, so obviously that has to be factored in. And when I asked Mike Norvell specifically about the offensive line, which has been an issue now for 5 years, he said that he thought they would be better. They've got some veterans coming back that should help, but that is not a strength on this team. Receiver, they're going to have to play some true freshmen. They just don't have anybody to rely on. No idea who the quarterback's going to be. That's an open competition with Mackenzie Milton and Jordan Travis. Defensively, they've got some transfers that they hope to rely on to make a huge impact. They've got a couple players at linebacker. Amari Gaynor would be one of them. But this is a very young team. They lost a lot of guys from last year's team, and I think 60% of them are either freshmen or sophomores. So when you look at the youth, how many guys they've lost, and the depth questions at key positions like offensive line, linebacker, and receiver, it's very hard to see this team coming together to win 9 games. Plus, the schedule's extremely difficult. I mean, right off the bat, before you even look at the entirety of it, they're opening at home against Notre Dame. They have to play at North Carolina. Obviously, they have Clemson and they have Florida. So they're going to have 4 top 10, top 15 teams already on the schedule, not looking at anybody else in the ACC. So it's going to be a challenge. There's no question. I do think they're going to be better, though. I think they're getting there. But how long it takes to get to the point where they can compete for championships, that's an open question. And I don't even know if Mike Norvell has an answer on that right now.
I mean, do you buy into the theory that 1 year of, I think they go 6-6 and they had to buy a game to get bowl eligible, and a lot of people talk about Jimbo not caring that year. Do you think that is the genesis of this terrible run they're on right now? I mean, this is a team that just a few years ago won a championship, not only a championship, and then the next year they're in the playoffs again.
No question, Pat. And David Hale and I spent months working on a story about what has happened at Florida State. And a lot of people want to point to that 2017 season, which was the beginning of the end for Jimbo. But really the cracks started to show even before that. When you look at recruiting, they essentially went on autopilot. Yeah, they had these top 5 classes, but when they brought these guys in, they couldn't develop them. And that's why you're seeing issues on the offensive line. This is years and years of misses on the offensive line. Receiver, they haven't had elite receivers there in years. And that goes back to 2015, 2016, and some of the misses that they had there. Quarterback, how many misses have they had at quarterback, and transfers, guys who've transferred out of there? That all started before 2017. So the cracks were there, but they were winning 10 games. They beat Michigan in the Orange Bowl, and okay, you can kind of live with it. But 2017 is when the snowball started accelerating down the hill and took out everything and everyone with it. And they're left with a situation. They bring in a new coach, and he has his own issues that he's got to work through. And the players were divided about whether they wanted him in there or not. The administration, the Seminole boosters, not completely in support of what was happening toward the end of Jimbo or with Willie Taggart. And so you've got a situation where it's not just on the field where you have problems. It's off the field as well, whether you have players getting in trouble, but also lack of support or guidance or leadership from the administration, where nobody's pulling in the same direction. Everybody's got a different idea for what they want Florida State football to be. So when Mike Norvell comes in, I don't think he had any idea how dysfunctional it was. So that's why it's going to take some time. I think everybody now is aligned from the administration. They've got a new head of the Seminole Boosters to what Mike Norvell wants, but the talent level on that team, it's just not there. It's not what you would expect out of a Florida State. And I think a lot of those issues started happening before that 2017 season.
Well, as far as the ACC goes, as we know, it's kind of felt like Clemson and the, 14 teams, 13 dwarfs, whatever it is. You know, obviously this is the post-Trevor Lawrence Clemson. And it's going to be interesting to me to watch to see whether teams this year can at least, make some progress against them.
I've heard from 2 different people in the ACC that this might be a year that's more challenging for Clemson than perhaps the last few. I had one coach actually say if Dabo thinks he's going to have DJ Uiagalelei just pick up where Trevor left off, he's in for a rude awakening, because there are those inside the league who just think that there is going to be a drop-off there. And then you factor in the aren't as strong on the offensive line, or they weren't last year. Receiver remains a huge question mark for them. They don't know whether Justin Ross is going to be fully cleared. They hope he is. But Frank Ladson, Joe Ngata, these are guys who are highly recruited, who haven't done anything at Clemson, who are expected to. And now no Travis Etienne at running back, who did so much for this team. Yeah, and he masked a lot of the issues that they had on the offensive line and at receiver, because he became such a valuable pass catcher out of the backfield that it kind of helped everybody forget that maybe they didn't have an elite receiver on the team a year ago. So now you take all that out of the equation, and what's left at Clemson. Now, I'm not saying that this is a team that's going to sit there and only win 8 games. No, they're still going to be the favorite to win the ACC. They're still going to be a favorite to get in the college football playoff. But I think there are more questions about Clemson going into this year than maybe in years past. We haven't even talked about the defense and what a dreadful performance that was in the playoff. And now where do they go from here? Is the defensive line going to be better? Are the linebackers as a group going to be better? Every single unit last year, I think, took a step back from what we're used to seeing out of the Clemson defense. So this is a crucial offseason for Clemson. And I do think there are some teams in the league that are looking at it and saying, we might have an opening here. Now, that doesn't mean those teams have the personnel or the depth to be able to do it. But I do think there is a sliver of a window this year for some teams to try and get through when it comes to Clemson, because my evaluation of where Clemson is right now is they're a step below where they were the last 3 years.
And the step goes from here to here, but then there's here. And I keep hearing that there are teams in the league that really think they're going to have some of their best teams going forward. I mean, who do you think the second best team in the ACC is?
Right now, I think it's North Carolina. But North Carolina has got a lot to prove, because this is a team that has been streaky since Mac Brown came in. And he wants it to be known that when he took over, nobody really knew how to win there. That's accurate. So now he's had to spend a lot of time getting his players to stop looking at the press clippings, stop looking at where they're ranked in the preseason, and just focus on what they have to do. And I think that's why you see them go from almost upsetting Clemson a couple of years ago to losing at Florida State last year. That should not happen based on where North Carolina is in their program compared to where Florida State is. That was a great win for Florida State, and I do not want to take anything away from Mike Norvell and the job that they did. But if North Carolina wants to be a team that seriously challenges Clemson, those are the games they have to win. Mm-hmm. They can't lose to losing teams, and they did that multiple times last season. So I think they're going to be really strong on defense. Offensively, they bring back Sam Howell, who everybody thinks is going to have a terrific year at quarterback. They've got some players to replace at receiver and at running back. But on the whole, I think if you asked anybody who covers the ACC, they would tell you they believe North Carolina is the second best team. And yet there is a huge gap between where Clemson is, even maybe possibly slightly down Clemson to where North Carolina is. And then beyond North Carolina, it's a bunch of teams with question marks. Right? Yeah. Let's talk about Miami. Okay, they're opening against Alabama. I think we're going to learn a lot about Miami.
0-1.
0-1 after the season opener. But then what does that do to a team? Can you forget about that? Or does that team just completely ruin your mindset for the rest of that game, ruin your mindset for the rest of the season? What does De'Aaron King look like? He's coming off of an ACL injury. How is he going to perform? Is he going to be a guy who can get this team to compete? Miami just played Clemson last year. And they weren't even in the game. It wasn't even competitive. So when you look at that, I don't know that Miami's made enough strides in one off season to get to the point where they can compete with Clemson. So there are a lot of question marks here for a lot of these teams. I don't think Florida State's going to be on the level that Clemson is at. So even if Clemson isn't as good without Trevor Lawrence, there are so many questions about the teams behind them that I don't think anybody can confidently say, oh, yeah, I'm going to pick North Carolina as the ACC champion or fill in the blank team as the ACC champion. I still think Clemson is going to be the prohibitive favorite to win the ACC again.
Yeah, and I mean, teams like Pitt, I mean, there's a part of me that kind of likes that team, but then I start looking at the questions, and that's the problem, I think, for all of us when we're looking at because this is such a great draft this year. The reason it's a great draft is a lot of guys are gone. they're not there anymore. So I think we look all around the country, whether it's the SEC or the ACC or any conference, and we're just trying to get in our heads how good these teams are really going to be.
Don't go with Pitt, Pat. I have learned my lesson.
I should have learned that last year.
Yes, you should have, because they looked great on paper last year. Yep. And my colleague David Hale was just pushing Pitt. And then, of course, Pitt does what they usually do. They lose games they shouldn't lose. And then suddenly you're like, well, there went that. I've done that before. And, Pat Narduzzi, who I talk to on a fairly regular basis, he's always like, well, don't pick us. The problem is when people pick us. Well, it's been 6 years and people pick you every year and still the same stuff happens. So, but they do have a veteran quarterback coming back in Kenny Pickett, who they believe can get them some wins. But they also lost some really good players, including 2 defensive ends who are going to be drafted fairly high in Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver. So what are they going to do there? They lost some very talented defensive backs who are going to get drafted. So their run game hasn't really evolved over the last few years. That's a major problem for Pitt. So when I look at Pitt, I still have so many questions about this team and this program and whether they can get over that hump and be a team that can get to 9 wins or 8 wins consistently. Louisville's the team. That's a huge question mark for me. Can they stop turning the ball over? If they can stop turning the ball over on offense, they might have a chance to be what they were in year 1 under Scott Satterfield. But last year, was not what anybody expected them to be, because their quarterback, Malik Cunningham, turned the ball over a lot, threw a bunch of interceptions, he fumbled, and it was completely disjointed on offense. So he's back. They feel good about some of the players that they have coming back on defense. They feel like they'll be better there. But again, is Louisville going to be the team we saw in year 1 with Scott Satterfield, or is it going to be the team we saw in year 2? I don't know. That's why in the ACC this year, it's so hard to even project how I'm going to rank the teams in their divisions when it comes time to make those preseason choices, because once again, beyond Clemson, everybody has a major question mark that disqualifies them from any sort of consideration to truly compete for a championship.
Yeah, I got news for Pat Narduzzi. I picked Alabama every week last year, and that didn't seem to bother them. And I'm pretty sure I picked Ohio State every week last year. And it didn't seem to bother them, so you just got to overcome that. And hey, last question for you, Andrea, and we really appreciate your time. You saw what UCF did this week with the Twitter handles and Instagram handles on their jersey, and I know this is where we're going, and okay, I can live with it. The only problem I have is the sports writer in me, even though I'm semi-retired, who, when you're watching a game, if you've got a handle that's really bizarre, I don't know who you are. I want to know who you are. But that old man get off my lawn is not going to work. They're still going to go with this stuff, aren't they?
So I asked UCF whether this is something they will do once the season starts, and they haven't made a decision about that just yet. I think this was just a trial run to see how the players felt about it, what kind of feedback and response that they got. Recruiting, obviously, is a big deal, and how that was going to play with recruits, I think, was part of this. But whether they have them on their jerseys or not, the state of Florida has name, image, and likeness legislation that is set to begin on July 1st. So if teams are not thinking about that in our state, they're going to be left behind. And so from their perspective, they feel like, okay, social media is actually going to be a very big factor in all of this. Guys who have big followings, they can market themselves to different people, maybe outside of football. And I've read stories about this where social media presence and followers can be a large determinant to what companies potentially could pay you. Because if you've got a large audience, you can sell to a lot more people. And so I think that's one of the reasons for having those handles back there, is because these players know that they have to use the social media to be able to market themselves. And Florida State just went into a partnership today. It happened this morning to help empower their student athletes on name, image, and likeness. And they're partnering with their business school to offer a 2-credit course for players to understand what their value is. How do I market myself? How can I use social media to my advantage? So if schools are not being proactive about this, then they're failing their student athletes right now. And whether we like the Twitter handles on the back of the jersey or not, for them, it's all about what the players want, because of this whole player empowerment movement and the power that the players have right now, especially in this arena. So I have no problem with UCF doing that. I'm not sure if they'll continue to do it, but it's something that I think they feel they needed and wanted to do for their players and also for the recruits who are tuning in to watch UCF.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting, really about an interesting year as we try to get back to full stadiums. The name, image, and likeness becomes a big factor. The transfer portal is taken over, but you either evolve or you get left behind, and that includes old people like me. Andrea, thanks so much. It's always great talking to you, and hopefully I'll see you soon at a football game.
Pat, I want to say one thing before I go. I know you're having Becky Burleigh on. Becky Burleigh was the first Florida coach that I got to cover as a student there, covering soccer with Mark Long, who works at the AP right now. And I texted her when I saw that she was retiring, and I wanted to thank her for her patience with me as a student journalist trying to figure out what the heck I was doing, because I'll be honest, I had no idea what I was doing at 19 years old in terms of trying to act like a professional, asking questions about soccer. And she was fantastic. And some of my best memories as a student at Florida are covering the soccer team. And a lot of that has to do with Becky and what she did for me and for Mark in opening up practices and allowing us to come by and interview her and her players. So I wanted to say that, and I wanted to say congrats to her on an awesome career.
Yeah, she's the best, and I will tell her that when we have her on. She's been a great thing in my life too. I mean, where I can just pick up the phone and call her anytime. I mean, that's pretty amazing when you're a national championship coach. But Andrea, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Thanks, Pat. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Andrea Adelson from ESPN.com covers college football, of course, mainly covers the ACC, but she does a lot of great things for ESPN.com. We appreciate her. Okay, we're gonna have Becky on at 35 after. Okay, so I want to go ahead and get to. Let's go ahead and do 3 things. How about that? We'll do 3 things sponsored by the Gainesville Quarterback Club. They had Dan Mullen Tuesday as their speaker. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there. I wanted to be there, but just wasn't ready after my dad passed on Monday. I got a picture of my dad up here. Do you see that? No, it's on the other side. Sorry. Picture up there. So he can watch me do this podcast from now on without having to log on. I don't think they have Twitter or anything in heaven, but that's where he is. I know that. All right. 3 things. Let's start off with number 1. Yes, the big story today is everybody's mad at instant replay in baseball. I was watching the game. I'm a huge Braves fan. When the Braves gave up what turned out to be the winning run, the top of the 9th inning, to the Phillies, no, I don't think he touched the plate. Look, it all evens out. I didn't get that upset. I was upset for the moment that it happened, but I'm like, it's game 9 of the baseball season. I'm not going to get too upset. But replay doesn't work, okay? It doesn't work in any sport 100%. Just because they have replay doesn't mean it's going to get the call right. And everybody has to understand that. This one was, I think they blew the call, but I mean, there was just enough doubt if you watch the play where, I don't know if that back leg touch before. I get it. I get why they overturned it. I think they made the wrong call in the first place, and that's the problem, is if you make the wrong call in the first place, it's so hard to overturn them, especially in baseball, especially when you had an umpire standing right over the play and called him safe. And you know what? Who's doing the evaluation in New York? Other umpires, other former umpires. They're not going to throw their guy into the bus for a play that close. If there's a way to get out of overturn the call, they will. Stunk. I didn't like losing the game, but to be honest with you, I've been so busy with things going on, obviously, I did not even know what the Braves record was till they started watching the game. And to be honest with you, I didn't start watching till the 7th inning. I won't say anything. But anyway, it was just fun to watch a baseball game again. All right, number 2, I've got to find this out, and I don't know that it's true, and it probably isn't because while it's not a common name, I'm sure there are other people named this, but this pitcher from North Texas, Hope Troutwine. Troutwine, remember Phil Troutwine? Great player here. Maybe they're related. I want to find that out. I meant to text him. I'll text him a little bit later. Pitched a game, the first game in college softball history, where she struck out all 21 batters. And what's amazing to me is that it hasn't happened before, because when you go back to the old days of college softball and every game was 1-0, and many of those 1-0 games, they had to start with the runner on second. They're the ones who invented that rule. It is kind of surprising. It never happened before, but it did happen this time. So congratulations to Hope Troutwine. And if she's related to Phil, congratulations to Phil. Phil's one of the good guys out there. And finally, number 3, I saw this on Twitter, and at first I thought, is it April Fool's Day? No. Is somebody pranking me here? No. I looked at the source, and it was true. Kevin James is going to play Sean Payton in a Netflix movie about when Sean Payton was suspended and he had to coach his kids' team, which sounds like a good idea for a movie. I'm not saying I'll watch it. I ain't watching it. I love Kevin James. Don't get me wrong. Kevin James and Sean Payton have nothing in common, unless maybe Kevin James is going to go on that diet like Joaquin Phoenix did, where he only ate an apple a day to get down to that weight for the Joker. Maybe that's his plan. Yeah, I can kind of see that. All right, so we've got to take a break, and we will get to all our other stuff, Leonardo's Millhopper Quick Picks and Adam's Ribco Gator of the Week, and we'll talk about some of the other things coming up, including softball and volleyball, and gosh, it's a big weekend for Florida athletics, and I'm looking forward to it. But right now, take a break. We'll come right back, and we'll bring on Becky Burleigh, former Florida soccer coach, and she's probably already mad at me for saying that, even though it's true. You're watching Another Dooley Noted Podcast, or listening to it. You can get your favorite alcoholic brands from ABC Fine Wine and Spirits delivered right to your door. ABC Delivers is available in Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, and all of the Southeast Florida. Earn ABC points for coupons and free bottles through abcdelivers.com. It's powered by FedEx Same Day City, and you're going to love the price. Free with a $50 purchase for the first 7 miles. So wine, spirits, beer, and everything you need to celebrate. Get it delivered. Shop abcdelivers.com.
Titan MRI, North Central Florida's premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. At Titan MRI, we're focused on you, the patient, having a great customer experience. Our MRI equipment is modern and 75% quieter than any unit in its class. And our MRI unit has one of the largest openings of any of the newer high-strength MRI units, which allows comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic and larger patients. At Titan MRI, we look forward to serving you.
This is Pat Dooley, and I want to tell you about my friends at the Gainesville Quarterback Club. I'm a member, and you should be too. It's the oldest Gator booster club in the world and a great place to meet new friends, network with prominent business people, and hear a great collection of speakers, including Dan Mullen, throughout the football season. Go ahead and give John Stevens a call at 352-222-8516 or sign up on the website, quarterbackclub.org. Thanks so much to our title sponsors, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits and Titan MRI, and to our pick sponsor, Leonardo's of Millhopper. You can find us live on Facebook and YouTube, or listen at your leisure on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or wherever you find all your favorite podcasts. I'm excited to continue this podcast and to have your company on board as a sponsor. If you're interested in being part of the show, email me at patrickdooley54@gmail.com or give me a call, 352-317-3444. Okay, and welcome back to another Dooley Noted Podcast presented by Titan MRI and ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. It's a great pleasure and an honor to bring on the great Becky Burleigh, and I hate to say former head coach at the University of Florida. It makes me kind of sad to say that, Becky.
Well, it doesn't even feel like that yet because they haven't named another one yet, but I'm sure that's coming soon.
Yeah, are you involved in the search at all? I mean, are you going to drop some names on them?
Well, I think that's an administrative job. I'm happy to be an advisor, but don't want to be directly involved.
Yeah, by the way, we just had Andrea Adelson on, who wanted to make sure I passed on how much she appreciated when she was a 19-year-old writer for the Alligator and her first job was to cover soccer, how you kind of guided her through the ropes, as you did me, I might add.
Well, it's kind of fun teaching people about soccer, so I don't mind that at all.
By the way, I did a thing for the newsletter, the alumni newsletter, and one of the questions I asked you, and I'm going to ask it here, and maybe you've had some time to think about it, why has there never been a good soccer movie? And you pointed out that Ted Lasso is a great series, and I said, yeah, they should make it a full movie, and then there would be a good soccer movie.
It's true. You're kind of right about that. I think there's a niche market out there.
Yeah. We got to find it though. So has it set in a little bit? I mean, your last game wasn't that long ago against Miami, of course a win. Is it kind of settled in with you?
Yeah, I think it started to. I mean, this time of year in a normal non-COVID year would be the end of our spring season, so it feels kind of natural in that rhythm. But at the same time, I think when August gets here and things are getting fired back up again, that's when it's really going to feel weird.
Yeah, again, you're going to have a lot of players. Whoever the new coach is going to be coaching those players, and so there's going to be a pride level there just watching them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we've got some great players on our team right now, and I think they're excited about a change. Probably a little anxious at the moment because they're just in flux a little bit. But I've tried to tell them that Scott Strickland's got a really good choice of people. Florida's an amazing place, and I think that they're going to hire someone amazing.
What seems more surreal to you, that you have now retired from this job, and I know we'll talk about your new job, or when you won the national championship and being on that field and celebrating?
Good question. They were both pretty surreal. The hardest part about the end of the Miami game was knowing that at that point we weren't really going to meet as a team again. And that's always hard at the end of every season. I think the abruptness of sports ending for any team, any season is always the most difficult part of coaching. But when it's like the end, that was a little bit weird. Yeah,
I would think it was. But when you look back on winning that championship, I mean, when you started that season, did you think, hey, we might be able to win it all, even knowing North Carolina was somewhere down the road?
I don't think that we thought that at the beginning of the season, but I think midway through the season, after we had played North Carolina during the regular season at home, the only time we've ever played them at home,
right,
and had a really good competitive match with them, that's when we started thinking that it was a possibility.
And that must have been a great moment. I remember that crowd, people were hanging off the bottom of the bleachers. I mean, I was there, everybody was there. If you weren't there, you weren't at the thing you had to be at that night. That was a credible night.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy night. I mean, it was, there were people sitting on the edge of the track, and it was a really amazing environment. And I think that that game was pivotal in us winning that championship, because I don't think we would have had the confidence had that game not occurred.
What was your stomach like the last 5 minutes of that game?
The last 5 minutes of that game, I think it was more like the last 75 minutes of that game, because we scored early. Probably you could say 85, because I think we scored in the first 5 minutes. But North Carolina had a great team that year, and they were certainly pressuring, and we had some outstanding defensive performances, especially from our goalkeeper, Meredith Flaherty. She was outstanding in that game. But it was just a total team effort, and that's what it was going to take to stop a dynasty like UNC.
I remember, I'll never forget this, calling my parents after I got done writing and everything, and all they wanted to talk about was the goalkeeper, and they wanted to talk about Flaherty. What do you know about her? How in the world is she that good? They were just in love with Meredith Flaherty after the game, and it certainly was unbelievable effort by her, and it was just a great effort. But I mean, you had a lot of close shots again. You had chances to go. I mean, Is there one season that you kind of go, man, that team was good enough to do it again?
There was a team where I think it was, I don't know how long ago it was, not very long ago. We played out at Stanford and we lost to Stanford to go to, I believe it would have been either the Final Four or the Elite Eight. And that was a very good team. And that Stanford team was a very good team as well. And I think that team had a chance. Like, there was just a lot of pieces on that team. And, in our sport, soccer is a pretty crazy sport when it comes to margin of error, probably more so than any other sport. And, you cannot downplay, whether you're on the winning side of it or the non-winning side of it, the role that that luck plays in your ability to get outcomes.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, the ball can hit off the post and go this way or that way. You never know, and that could be the only goal or non-goal of the game. Let's talk a little bit about what you're getting ready to do, or I think you've started doing, and because you started it as kind of a pet project, and now it's going to be a master's degree class at the University of Florida.
Yeah, so a few years back, I met a guy from basketball through Mark Dagnall, who was on Billy's staff and now the Oklahoma City Thunder coach. And that's Brett Ledbetter. And when we met, we started talking about this kind of pet project that we had about trying to take character development into the sports space, but at the highest levels. So not just as a philanthropic project, but more as a way to get better results. And I think it's been really interesting as we've kind of progressed through this journey together. The way that movement has sort of grown has been pretty impressive. And I think there's a really big appetite for that type of information. And so, luckily here in the Health and Human Performance College, we're going to make that into a master's degree. And ironically, the person that's been really helping me do that is Meredith Flaherty. She's a doctoral student over there, and she's been a TA kind of helping me out.
That's great stuff. I mean, I would think that one of the things you may be teaching new coaches or people who want to be coaches is how to get along with the media, because I don't know if I've ever known anybody who's gotten along better with the media. I've told this story before that my boss came to me one day and he said, "Hey, we need you to do something because Abby Wambach is about to score the goal that will make her the scoring I'm trying to say this the right way, scoring the most goals in U.S. soccer history." And I said, "All right, I'll call Becky." Becky's standing in line at the Acme Oyster House, and we did a great interview. I think I helped you because you had to stand in line, so it gave you something to do.
I remember that. It was a good time filler.
That's right. But I mean, obviously when you come here, you're trying to sell soccer to people, but why do you think you did kind of get along with the media so well and handling them?
I don't know. I think that I never felt an adversarial relationship with the media. I mean, I think that, you all have your job to do, and sometimes that's to report on not so great results that we might have. And I don't see that as personal. I mean, I think that's just part of what everybody's job is. It's my job to make our team better so that you can report on better results. But I think that I've always felt like it's important for the coach to be consistent in the way that they act, whether they win a big match, be willing to give an interview, or whether they lose a big match, be willing to give an interview. I've just not felt like that should be dependent upon the outcome.
I was surprised when we were talking the other day and you talked about one of your goals for this fall is to go to the U.S. Open. I didn't know you were that big a tennis fan.
Yeah, I love watching tennis on television and live when I can. I've been to the French Open, but I've never been to the U.S. Open because I always fell during the fall, which is not a very flexible period of time in my life as a coach.
Yeah, sure.
And I play a little tennis. I play in the league here in Gainesville, and it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of parallels, to be frank, between soccer and tennis. The footwork is really similar, and it's kind of a nice break from a team sport to an individual sport. It's a lot of fun.
Have you, and again, you and I both are retiring, or we're both retired, but I don't think you're going to do it as badly as I've done it. I think you're going to do it better. You're not going to try to get 6 jobs lined up. But have you thought about some of the other things you want to do now that you have time?
Yeah, I'm trying to just sort of create a little bit of space in my life to have things show up as opposed to scheduling, because I think it's really easy to feel like you need to fill space. I think there's a push towards that, and I think I have to resist that. Even now, like I still come to the office every morning. I was here this morning at 8, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like I need to, and I have stuff that I need to do, but I feel like I need to evaluate that a little bit. But I think in the end, I definitely want to get involved in the teaching side of it. When this is kind of a little known fact, but when my first job, when I coached at Barry, our contracts for all the coaches were 2/3 coaching, 1/3 teaching. And most of the coaches were like, oh, this teaching part, is just something you had to do. But I actually really enjoyed that part. And so I'm kind of looking forward to putting some energy into that. I feel like as a young coach, I had no option of ways to develop myself from an academic standpoint. Like you couldn't major in coaching. You couldn't really take classes that were dedicated towards coaching. And I would like that to change, because I feel like it would give people a little bit more experience going into it, because I feel like coaching is such a job that you learn on the fly. And the hard part about that in this age of social media is there's just not much time and space for growth, because it's like immediate results are necessary to keep your job. And so having a little bit more preparation going into that would be really beneficial.
There's a great Bobcat Goldthwait joke where he says, I don't have my job anymore. Actually, it's just when I go there, somebody else is doing it. So one day you're going to be sitting there and you're going to walk in and there's going to be another guy or a girl or woman in there, and you're going to have to say, oh yeah, it's not my job anymore.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the process of starting the move out, so I definitely need to get a move on with that.
Last thing for you, I'm just curious, has Scott indicated what the timeline is to hire that coach? Because obviously you got to get with recruiting and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm sure he would like that timeline to be as soon as possible. I think the challenge of that is with this COVID season being a really unique season, that there's still, the NCAA tournament to be had. We haven't even had our selection show nor the actual tournament. And I would imagine that some of the potential candidates could be playing in that tournament. So I think that's the limiting factor at this point. But then once that's over, I would imagine that process will move pretty quickly.
Becky, it's been a pleasure. I've always enjoyed it, and I know I'll see you around Gainesville. Obviously, as we start to get out more, used to see you every once in a while at different places, and I always enjoyed covering your games. And I was one of the people that were there for the national championship. From some of
yeah, I'm looking forward to some things. Like I could tailgate a little bit now, or I could, have a little bit more flexibility in the sports that I go to watch. I love watching all sports. So I've only been out to a few tennis matches so far this spring, but I'd like to get out to some softball. I haven't even been to the new baseball park yet. So I got a list of stuff that I got to get going on.
Yeah, we'll invite you to some tailgates. You'll be a celebrity at them, Just walk around.
We use that word loosely in Gainesville, Pat. We use that word loosely.
I don't know about that, because there are a few celebrities, and you're one of them. And I appreciate your time and all the stuff you've done. And I was thinking about this the other day. I remember you signing a soccer ball for my dad, who just passed, and that I thought about that. What a great person you are, and I thank you so much for everything.
Well, I was really sorry to hear about your dad. He's kind of like a celebrity that I don't know. I haven't met because, I'm not in the golf world too much. But, you've spoken so highly of him, and I can appreciate that, as having parents that were really supportive of me too. So, I'm just sending you a lot of love with that.
I appreciate it, Becky. Thanks so much. And we'll check you out later on, okay? Thanks again for joining us.
Sounds good. Thanks, Pat.
All right. Another Dooley Noted podcast that needs a break right now. When we come back, we have our Leonardo's Millhopper Quick Picks, of course. We got that coming up. And we've got the Adams Ribco Gator of the Weekend coming up. And I want to talk about a couple other events that are certainly on my radar. They should be on yours as well. All that and more on Another Dooley Noted podcast. Thanks so much to our title sponsors, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits and Titan MRI. and our pick sponsor, Leonardo's of Millhopper. You can find us live on Facebook and YouTube or listen at your leisure on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or wherever you find all your favorite podcasts. I'm excited to continue this podcast and to have your company on board as a sponsor. If you're interested in being part of the show, email me at patrickdooley54@gmail.com or give me a call, 352-317-3444. You can get your favorite alcoholic brands from ABC Fine Wine and Spirits delivered right to your door. ABC Delivers is available in Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, and all of the Southeast Florida. Earn ABC points for coupons and free bottles through abcdelivers.com. It's powered by FedEx Same Day City, and you're going to love the price. Free with a $50 purchase for the first 7 miles. So wine, spirits, beer, and everything you need to celebrate. Get it delivered. Shop abcdelivers.com.
Titan MRI, North Central Florida's premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. At Titan MRI, we're focused on you, the patient, having a great customer experience. Our MRI equipment is modern and 75% quieter than any unit in its class. And our MRI unit has one of the largest openings of any of the newer high-strength MRI units, which allows comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic and larger patients. At Titan MRI, we look forward to serving you.
All right, welcome back to Another Dooley Noted. We appreciate our two great guests. Andrea Adelson was tremendous. So was Becky Burleigh. That was a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm hoping to get Jay Billis will be on Friday. He has agreed to do it, but we still are trying to work out the logistics of it. And then we may bring Robbie in again Friday, as we do every once in a while. And we enjoy his time as well. All right, two things I wanted to talk about. I mean, it is such a big weekend for women's sports in this town, although not much of it's happening in this town. In fact, almost none of it's happening in this town, but it's exciting to me. And that's one thing I've always loved about living in Gainesville, was that I like all sports. There's not a sport I don't like. I mean, I can even sit and watch the Daytona 500, and I don't have a huge NASCAR. I don't have a guy in NASCAR, but I like to watch any sports. It's just the way I'm kind of built. It's kind of the way I was raised by my dad. But this weekend, first of all, Florida had these games against Western Kentucky. One was canceled, one they won. The other, then they lost. They were losing to Canada, which didn't matter, didn't count for anything. But you still had to like to play these exhibition games. Anyway, while they were doing that, Alabama took 2 out of 3 from Arkansas. Arkansas was unbeaten in the league, so that tightens that race up. And now Florida goes to Alabama, which is always an incredibly intense rivalry for 3 games. I'm fired up about it. I can't wait to see how that all works out. Of course, Florida baseball will be at home, and they're still battling to get back in this thing. They didn't have a great weekend, but it was saved, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You also have Florida gymnastics, which will be in the there's only 8 teams in the finals, and they've changed this last year, or 2 years ago, I guess it was. Yes, 2 years ago, because obviously there wasn't a competition last year, and we talked about that a lot, about how Jenny Rowland and everybody was so disappointed. But last year, or 2 years ago, they changed it. It used to be there was a Super 6. Now it's 4 teams go in the morning, 4 teams go at night. The 2 winners in each one go to the finals. The 4 on the floor, the fearsome foursome, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if they've got a great nickname for it yet, but that'll be interesting because Florida goes in the early session, and they just got to finish in the top 2. It doesn't carry over what you do. The way they do it now. So I'm really going to be fascinated by that. So you got that going on Friday. So Friday is the first, and then Saturday is when you try to qualify for the finals, and then Saturday is the finals. This team's good enough to win it. We all know that. They're #1 seed. We'll see if they do it. I mean, to me, there is no sport with a smaller margin of error than gymnastics, because gymnastics, if you're doing a backflip and you have a little bit of an error, you're not going to do well, because you got a 4-inch bar. So I find the sport fascinating. I think it's really interesting that these young ladies are able to do what they do with screaming and yelling going on all around them and music going on. In addition, Florida's volleyball team starts in the NCAA tournament. Mary Wise's team, which was the 8th seed, I should say. That's not an 8 seed. An 8 seed plays a 9. They are the 8th seed in the tournament, and they start on Thursday. They play the winner of Creighton and Morehead State. However, Creighton gets to host, so they'll have, it's in Omaha, and it's a great, which I wish I was going to either one of these events. I mean, Omaha and Fort Worth are two of my favorite cities. So you got all this stuff going on with the women's sports, and I've said this before, and maybe it sounds preachy. If you don't like women's sports and you live in this town, you just don't like sports. I mean, there's so many, they're so good in everything. It's so much fun to watch. And eventually maybe they'll get there in women's basketball. But look, I know we're a football town. And then there's like football, and then way down here is basketball, and then way down right here is baseball, and then everything else kind of falls underneath that. But I still like talking about it. I still enjoy it as well. Let's give you the Leonardo's at Millhopper Quick Picks contest. And I've been a little lax on this with all the stuff that's been going on. We haven't had a qualifier yet, and I'm going to make sure we get this stuff up on Twitter and on Facebook. I haven't been doing that. I've just had stuff going on, as you know. And we will get these up here and make sure we get a few more contestants in. And here's, again, we're doing the two things, which should be fairly easy to make a decision on. And it's going to be interesting because tomorrow, Tuesday, Florida plays FSU here in Gainesville. That is in town. That's one of the few things in town. And, of course, baseball will be in town all weekend as well against Missouri. Okay, but it's just a simple question. FSU at Florida, who do you got? Now, FSU is 6-6, I think, in their last 12 games. But, of course, they beat Florida already in Tallahassee. So, look, I know you guys all want Florida to win, but, I mean, analyze this. Try to figure out what the midweek pitching is going to be like. Things like that. I'm not trying to give you advice. All right, so that's number one. And number two, UCF is at Florida in softball on Wednesday night. The over-under is 5 runs for Florida. That's what I'm putting it at. And so it's pretty simple. You can just go Florida, over. Boom. How hard is that to do? And you can get into our next segment of the Leonardo's at Millhopper Quick Picks. We've had a great time with those so far this year. We've had 3 different winners. And Drew Berry emailed me the other day. I got to find that email. I've been kind of distracted, but I got to get to him. I got a nice package for him, including $50 gift certificate at Leonardo's Millhopper. So those are Leonardo's at Millhopper Quick Picks. Last thing we're going to do, it's our Adams Ribco Gator of the weekend. And love Adam so much. We had a lot of texts back and forth during the last week or so. And he was telling me he was drinking out of a Bob Dooley Invitational cup while celebrating my dad's life. And, I will say this, guys, if you're interested in playing the Bob Dooley, normally I sit here and brag about we're full. We've had a couple things happen, and people aren't able to play. There is an opening for a foursome. If you want to get in the foursome, all you got to do is call me. You know the number. If you want to advertise, 317-3444. No big whoop. But the Adams Ribco Gator of the weekend is Chris Armstrong. And the reason he is the Gator of the weekend is because if he doesn't hit a 3-run homer in the 9th inning, Florida probably gets swept by Tennessee. And then I think people were like giving up on this season. I'll be honest with you, I gave up on that game. I was sitting there and I go, I don't want to watch this anymore. Because it was 3-1 when I pulled in after I got home from the health club. 3-1, Florida had the lead. I went and took a quick shower, put on some clothes, came out. They were losing 5-3. I'm like, what happened? So I got kind of frustrated, and then it was 6-3, and I go, I'm done. So I've got to get better at that. Staying with the team, staying with the game. Florida came back and won on Chris Armstrong's 3-run homer, and he hit a bomb, and he's hit some bombs in batting practice, and I give Jeff Cardozo a hard time all the time because he always talks about him. I go, hit him in the game. Don't hit him in batting practice. I don't care what you do in batting practice. At any rate, that's going to do it. So, anyway, Adams Ribco Gator of the weekend. Of course, we'll have a new Gator of the week. We'll have a lot to choose from on Friday's show. Look forward to that show as well. Thanks so much to Evan for everything he does. We appreciate him, not only for producing, directing, and should be a star in this show, but for everything else he does. And we'll be back with another edition of Another Dooley Noted Podcast Friday. And I think we'll have Jay Billis on, and I hope we do, and that'll be a lot of fun. Until then, Pat Dooley saying, I am deep, I am way back, and I am out of here.